Hello, I am Jason Graves, and Final Fantasy Adventure was and is the first modern Legend of Zelda game. On many occasions, in a remarkable number of understandings, A Link to the Past holds this distinction. What if I told you that Final Fantasy Adventure is the missing link in between the first and third Zelda games? Now, if you know me, you know that this is not a slight to Zelda 2. Zelda 2 might, in fact, be my favorite video game of all time. But even I'll admit that it's almost a dead end when compared to what the series would become. Everything that anyone has ever loved about Zelda A Link to the Past and Zelda Link's Awakening is all here, and it always was. When the Secret of Mana collection was announced, I didn't really consider getting it. Because, for one, I'm not the biggest fan of the game, and more influentially, I had assumed that it would be digital only. Seeing this game on the shelf... Oh shit, I didn't get the prop. Seeing this game on the shelf, live in the plastic, was akin to a child calling out to its dad. Well, I bought the heck out of this hot piece of plastic and told it, "Daddy's here." This collection presents a game preserved in amber. It confidently tosses in a monochrome game called Final Fantasy Adventure, and assures us that it most certainly does belong with these other two canonized masterpieces. This is a check the game writes, and one that I'm not afraid to cash. Anyone with a functioning retina will tell you that Final Fantasy is not the same thing as Secret of Mana, or The Legend of Zelda for that matter. They've made a lot of Secret of Mana games over the years. It's both odd and telling that they would include this, and not something that keeps the same naming conventions. There's not a simpler way to put it. This game is here because it's good stuff. Final Fantasy Adventure is as fulfilling and as misdirectly named as a McGangbang. The original came in these cute Game Boy cartridges. Well, it's been 30 years and the cartridges have only gotten cuter. Final Fantasy Adventure is a game with courage in regard to design. The game has character. You can feel the personality oozing through the 60 frames per second on your Nintendo Switch's screen. Final Fantasy Adventure bought the original Legend of Zelda Lego set, built what was on the instructions, and decided that it still wasn't good enough. At some point, somebody at Square had this incredible idea. Why don't we gate progression behind obtaining different weapons? This is a game that starts out with a small portion of a larger world that continues to open up as you gain new weapons and traverse obstacles. Zelda 2 achieved something similar, although in that game, the items were all passive. Final Fantasy Adventure is the next step for video games. Items that would not only change your combat capabilities, but act as keys to the locked doors of progression. The goal of any Zelda puzzle is to make the player feel smart. This game steals the puzzles where you essentially need to figure out where to bomb the wall using context clues. Maybe there would have been an empty square on your map, but it also has moments where the puzzles would make even the most obtuse point-and-click adventure games blush. There's a part where this boy in a town tells you, and I quote, "palm trees and 8. Naturally, this means that you need to go to a specific place 10 screens away and to walk between these palm trees repeatedly until an entrance to a cave opens up. This game does a lot of little things right, like this part where you obtain the sickle. In a lesser game, you might just get the item and it would be up to you to figure out what it does or how to use it. Here, before you can leave the screen, the game requires you to open up the menu, equip the sickle, and destroy these plants. The game has now effortlessly taught you how to equip items, and told you that items can be used to affect terrain. There's this other part where you get a second player, which happens often, but in this instance you come across these blob enemies that you can't destroy, but your partner can with this magic spell that he's casting. When you get to the end of that area, you obtain the spell for yourself, and you already know what it does because the game showed you in the preceding dungeon. Final Fantasy Adventure, like any other great of its type, is also a memory game. It might show you an obstacle, like that gap that you can't cross with a pole on the other end, and when you get the prerequisite item, it will expect you to return and put it to good use. It sounds simple, and that's because it is. Showing the player the problem before delivering upon them a solution is something that we will see in the future, and it makes the player feel smart. Despite what any other video on YouTube will tell you, this is a Final Fantasy game. The imagery is pervasive and the RPG elements are real and in-depth. It has experience points and levels, but you choose which stats to increase. You can level up only your power and become a fighter class, or you can raise your wisdom to become a white mage of sorts. Not literally, your sprite doesn't change for example, but your capabilities will eventually resemble your preferred Final Fantasy class. It's a simple game. I'm a simple man, and that's all I have to say. I could try and talk about the story. Well, there's a girl who can talk to a tree or something. She gets kidnapped a lot. Well, bottom line, if you think busy work, fetch quests, and confusion are fun, then squeeze Final Fantasy Adventure like a gun. You know, that's lame. Then Final Fantasy Adventure goes toe-to-toe with anyone. No, seriously, this game impressed me. It's not just a throw-in to the collection. It's good stuff.